Tunadapi sunichena Tarariva sahishnuna Amanina manadena Kirtaniya sadahari Harinama 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 Vakivalam Kalo naskeva 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 gatiranyata Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So every month I come here and I speak on the Srimad Bhagavatam, the ripened fruit of the tree of knowledge which we call Vedas. This Srimad Bhagavatam is the mature contribution of Bhagavan Rishi Sri Vyasadeva, disciple of Sri Narada, and the literary incarnation of Krishna, being empowered to compile the Vedic library. And this Srimad Bhagavatam was the final masterpiece written on the order of his Guru Narada Muni. So I must remember and pray for the blessings of Sri Vyasadeva, and I must present his Siddhanta, or his conclusion. After all, this is called Vyasasana. Therefore, if I sit here, I am duty bound to present his philosophy, not my own. And that is what I have learned from my spiritual master, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who accepted me as his disciple in April 1974. Currently, we began with the very first verse of the first canto. We have finished. Now we're on chapter 2, Divinity and Divine Service. Divinity means God, and divine service means bhakti, devotional service. Service to Godhead. Bhakti is not something that we can use in terms of another living entity or human being or even a demigod. Bhakti is reserved for Vishnu or Krishna, God. So, in the first chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, the scene was set. The sages of Naimisharanya, and they are performing a sacrifice for 1,000 years in order to bless the people who would take birth in Kali Yuga. Kali Yuga began the day Krishna left this planet 5,000 years ago. The sages selected Asuta Goswami as their acharya, and they asked him 6 questions. And in this second chapter, he has begun answering those 6 very, very important questions about Vedanta, the end of knowledge, the conclusion of knowledge. So tonight's verse, which is the next one in succession, is a most fundamental verse of Srimad Bhagavatam. Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Janayat Yashu Vairagyam Jnanam Chayad Ahoitukam. So Sutta Goswami has stated Vasudeve Bhagavati. Vasudeve means unto Krishna. Vasudev has several meanings. One meaning of the word Vasudev is that there is someone who is all pervasive and he is conscious of his all-pervasiveness. How is he all-pervasive? First of all, as we learn from the Bhagavad-Gītā, that within the heart of every living entity, Krishna has expanded himself as Param Atma. He is sitting in the heart alongside the individual Jiva. Paramatma and Atma are simultaneously one and different, but they are not equal in all respects. They are two distinct living beings, as Krishna points out in chapter 13, that the individual soul or Atma is conscious of its own particular field of activities known as the body and senses. I know what's going on in my body and mind. You know what's going on, but you don't know what's going on in mine, and I don't know what you're thinking. But then Krishna said, but I know what's going on in everybody's body. That is the difference between Paramatma and Atma. That's just one difference. There's many others. So that's why they can never be equal. And at no stage can Atma become the Paramatma. That's also not possible. Because you are Atma. That is who and what we are constitutionally, eternally. As Krishna also said in Bhagavad-Gītā. Because Bhagavad-Gītā is the preliminary study for Srimad Bhagavatam. You cannot understand Srimad Bhagavatam until you've gotten your PhD in Bhagavad-Gītā. What is your PhD in Bhagavad-Gītā? Krishna is God. If you accept Krishna is God, without doubting, you have your masters in Bhagavad-Gītā. As Krishna himself says in Purushottam Yoga chapter, one who knows me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, without doubting, is the knower of everything. That's what Krishna says, not me. That's what Krishna says. So if you accept Krishna as the Supreme, now you can proceed to Srimad Bhagavatam. So Vasudeva means he's all-pervasive. So he's all-pervasive in the hearts of every living being, but he's also all-pervasive. Why? All of the energy is his. As he says in Bhagavad-Gītā, all that is material and all that is spiritual comes from me, Krishna says. He is the proprietor. Bhoktaram yagata sarava loka maheshwaram. Just like you all have houses or apartments. If I visit you at your home, you are the proprietor, not me. I am your guest. I don't go to your house. Okay, I'll take that painting. I'll take that. You'll never invite me again. Because you are the proprietor of your house or apartment or car, whatever. You have possessions. We all have possessions. You are the proprietor. So Krishna says, Sarvaloka Maha Ishwaram. I am the proprietor of everything, material and spiritual. So, just like, again, if I go to your house, everything I see reminds me of you because it's your property. So in the same way, everything we see here in this material world, in the spiritual world, belongs to Krishna. That is the understanding we get from Bhagavad-Gītā. So this gives you a nice understanding of this word Vasudeva. But there's another meaning, which most of you know. Vasudeva means the son of Vasudeva. You all know, because you have read and heard millions of times, Krishna appeared as the son of Devaki and Vasudeva. And the night that Krishna appeared, he told Vasudeva and Devaki, this is not the first time I have come as your son. This is the third time. This is the last time because after this birth, you are going to my abode. You are perfect now. 3 times he appeared. Vasudeva and Devaki were previously Prishni Garbha and Sutapa. Prishni, not Prishni. Prishni and Sutapa. Therefore his name was Prishni Garbha. Prishni and Sutapa. Then he appeared as this Vasudeva and Devaki. Previously were a Kashyapa and Aditi. And Krishna came as Vamana. Chalayasi Vikramane Balim Adbhuta Vamana. Padanakanira Janita Janapavana. Keshavadrita Vamana Rupa Jaya Jagadisha Hare. He appeared in order to cheat. Chalayasi, the word is used by Jayadev Goswami. Chalayasi, cheating. He tricked him. He tricked Bali. And what did he trick him? I just want 3 steps of land. Shukracharya told Bali, don't do this. Don't do this. You don't understand. But Bali said, no, even if he has come to cheat me, let him. So with 2 steps, Vamanadev took everything and gave it back to Indra, king of heaven. Because Bali had come and taken everything away from Indra and the demigod, Devatas. And Lord Vishnu, as Vamanadev, came and returned it. And the 3rd step, Bali said, you can put on my head. And then the 3rd time, he appeared in his original form as Krishna. Because that is what we're going to learn in the next chapter. We're on chapter 2. But in chapter 3, we're going to learn the most important line in all 18,000 verses of Bhagavad-Gītā, in Srimad Bhagavatam. The most important line in all the 18,000 verses, Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam. That there are so many incarnations, but the origin of all those incarnations is on the altar. His name, Krishna, Purushottam. Which is why Krishna says in his Bhagavad-Gītā, Mattak parataram na'anyat. No truth superior to me. And another one, Aham Sarvasya Prabhu. Everything comes from me. Which is why Krishna says at the end of Bhagavad-Gītā, Kamlesh, Rādhā Raman Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Vraja Ang Tvang Sarva Papebhyo Mokshayashyami Ma Shucha. So now we have an explanation. We just did in 10 minutes an explanation of this word Vasudeva. Everybody say Vasudeva. Now the next word clarifies what I said at the very start. Bhagavati, the personality of Godhead. We should never consider or entertain that Vasudeva or God is an ordinary human being, as Krishna warns us in 9th chapter of Bhagavad-Gītā, Avajananti mang mudha. Only the rascals and fools consider me an ordinary human being. Why does that happen? There's a reason why that happens. There's several answers. Why people sometimes, you don't, but some people make the mistake of thinking that Krishna is an ordinary human being, because it was already stated actually in the previous chapter of the 1st canto that the sages headed by Shaunaka said, we want to know about Krishna because he appeared and was like a human being. And the phrase was used, so masked. When Krishna comes, he disguises himself to look like an ordinary human being, And if you don't know, you will misunderstand. Same way, in the Ramayana, Ravana thought that Ramachandra was just a ordinary human being. That's why you'll see in the Ramayana, time and time, his own people were telling Ravana, give Sita back. You're not going to defeat Ram and Hanuman. His own ministers, his own people were telling Ravana. But what Ravana could not hear, he was blinded by what? Lust. And what does Krishna say in Bhagavad-Gītā? The 3 gates leading to hell, what's the first one? Lust. Kam, yes. Ravana could not see. He could not hear. His own people, repeatedly he was being told. Just in the same way, correlating to the Mahabharata, Dhritarashtra was told so many times, Duryodhana was told so many times, give back what is the property of Yudhishthira. But, did they listen? Never. And in terms of Dhritarashtra, his brother told him, Vidura, Dhritarashtra's own servant Sanjaya also told him, you should stop this nonsense. You should check your son. But Dhritarashtra's sin was attachment. That was Dhritarashtra's main sin, attachment. His brother told him when Duryodhana was born, what was the okay? When Duryodhana was born, there was no conch shells blowing and flowers from the sky. What was happening when Duryodhana was born? Jackasses were sounding. There were earthquakes. There were fires. All inauspicious symptoms. Same way in Ramayana, when the battle started and the Rakshasas and Ravana were coming out to fight Ram and the monkeys, they saw many inauspicious omens. What did that seem to indicate? You're going to lose. So in the case of Duryodhana, when he was born, when Vidura, his brother, Dhritarashtra's brother, saw this, he said, you should abandon this child immediately. He will be the cause of the destruction of your whole family. But could Dhritarashtra do it? No. Why? Attachment. Big sin. Being attached to the wrong thing. You should be attached to the truth, to Sat, to things that are good, not attached to things that are evil. Duryodhana represents Kali. That's what Duryodhana represents. He's the personification of the age of Kali. All bad things. So the personality of Godhead, this is important, Bhagavati, personality of Godhead. Because we will learn in this chapter, coming up in 4 verses, the definition of the absolute truth. So, the absolute truth is impersonal, localized, and personal. And the ultimate feature is the personal feature, personality of Godhead. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama. Next word, Bhakti Yoga. So that's the next line, Bhakti Yoga. So it is a yoga. There are different yogas. Karma Yoga, Kriya Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Raja Yoga. And now there's Hollywood Yoga. And now next year there'll be a new one, Bhoga Yoga, Kali Yoga. That's coming, don't worry. But here we have Bhakti Yoga. Yoga means to connect, to link with what? The Supreme, with God. They're not teaching this in Hollywood Yoga. They don't teach this. They don't teach this. But when you read Bhagavatam, then you learn yoga means to link with the Supreme, to link with God. And bhakti means through the scientific process of loving devotional service. That's the key word, service. How do you, I've given this example hundreds of times because it's such a good example. You may say to somebody, I love you, but we have an expression here in America, actions speak louder than words. Talk is cheap. So the question is, how do you demonstrate that you love someone? It is by service. That's how you put your money where your mouth is. You demonstrate that you love someone by the service. Just like the wife serves the husband. That's how she shows her love. And the husband also serves the wife. And the parents serve the children, and hopefully later on, when the parents are old, the children serve their old, aged parents. There's that story in the Ramayana when Dasarath killed that young boy. He was serving his old parents who were blind. So, what's that? Yeah. So, the parents were blind. That young boy was their only shelter. They had nothing else. So that's why when Dasarath shot the young boy, that was the most tragic, sinful. And that's why he had to take the curse. That just as I am dying, losing my son, you will also die. Same way. And that's how it happened. So how did Dasarath give up his life? Complete separation, missing his son who had been banished because of his wife, who he thought was his best intimate friend. But one day, she turned out to be his worst enemy, Kaikeyi, right? The one he was most attached to, the pretty one. Be careful. The pretty ones, be careful. That's a joke, don't worry. Everybody chant the Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Jai Gadadhar's here, Haribol. So, Prabhupada translates Bhakti Yoga, contact or devotional service. Last month, because I listened back to these recordings. So last month I explained a very nice definition of bhakti given to us by Narada Muni, which is good because he is the Bhakti Shakti avatar. He is the empowered incarnation to teach us the science of bhakti. He has his own book, Narada Bhakti Sutras. So, he's an authority. So he gives us a nice definition. Sarva upadi vinirmuktam tatparat vena nirmalam rishikena rishikesha sevanam bhaktir uchyate. First thing Narada says, become free from all designations. Same thing Krishna says at the beginning of Bhagavad-Gītā. You're not your body, you are spirit soul. You're not your mind, you're spirit soul. That means getting free from false bodily designations. Today I'm a man, next life I could very well be a woman. That's a fact. I should not think, oh, I'm a man, I will always be a man. Not necessarily. Bhagavatam has stories about that. If you're too attached to that woman form, go ahead, take the woman form. You like it so much? Take it. So become free from designations. I'm not American, I'm not Indian, Canadian, this, that, that's not me. That's a temporary designation. I'm spirit soul, part and parcel of Krishna, his eternal servant. Now I'm free from designation. Tat paradvena nirmalam. Now, situate yourself in a clean state of existence. No sinful activities. Stop eating meat, fish, eggs. Give up illicit sex. Give up all kinds of intoxication. Give up gambling. In other words, reject Las Vegas. All right? Situate yourself in a pure state. Now, the key line. Rishikena, with your senses. Rishikesha sevanam. Serve Rishika Isha. That Rishikesha name is there in Bhagavad-Gītā. It refers to Krishna. Very good. Somebody knows their Bhagavad-Gītā. Rishikesh refers to Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because he is the master of the senses. So with your senses, even though they're material, even though they're defective, still, this is what you have. Use your senses to serve Krishna. Bhaktir uchyate. That is the simplest definition of what is bhakti yoga. With your senses, serve God. And the nice example given to us later on in 9th canto, Ambarish. Even though Ambarish was a king, he would still, with his crown, bow down to the Lord, the deity, in the temple. And that will be mentioned also in 2nd canto. Even you're wearing some lofty crown, don't be puffed up. Make sure that you come and bow down to God in the temple. And when you come, look at the deity. That is why it's important that the deity is dressed opulently so that your eyes are attracted. It's a very important service. Maintaining the deities and making them very, very attractive so that when people come in, oh, how nice. Yes, that's exactly what is required, so that your eyes are attracted. Then with his ears, Ambarish would not fall asleep in the kata. And he wouldn't have his cell phone on in the kata. He would listen very attentively to the descriptions of God when he would hear in the mandir. And with his hands, he would do different things. And with his nose, when the flower came, he would smell the flower or the incense. When these things are offered, these are called sacraments. They're purifying. You become purifying. You all take the diya, right, and you go like this, right? Or some of you do a long thing. That's good. You're taking that sacrament. That's good. So Ambarish used all of his senses to serve the Lord. That is Bhakti Yoga. Just like right now, you are trying to construct a new temple for the Lord. Correct? So when you give your money for that temple, that is also an item of Bhakti Yoga. Yes. Because what is that money? That's your blood. You didn't get that money by winning the lottery. You got that money by hard work, driving on the freeway every day, tolerating a nasty boss and all those other nasty people who eat all kinds of nasty things in the lunchroom, and you have to go like this. Oh, what are they eating? Yes, anyone who's worked in an office, you know, you can't even use the microwave because some of the things these people eat, it's intolerable. It's like where I live, there's a huge, over 400 apartments. So we have all kinds of people, Latino people, Indian people, Asian people. And the guy down below me, every once in a while, he starts cooking. I gotta close all the windows. It's like, it's choking. What is that stuff? Nasty. God. So, you have, when you're donating your hard-earned money, that is sacrifice. That's a sacrifice. So that's an aspect of Bhakti Yoga. Because there's 9 items in Bhakti. You're doing the first one right now. Shravanam, hearing. This is the beginning. This is the first step. Hearing. That's why we have the kata. That's why the kata is important. Sometimes there's a discussion. Why do we have to have a Prabhupada? It's important. Especially what we learned from Prabhupada. Doesn't mean, okay, we have the temple, I ring the bell, I've seen the deity, let me go home. No. You ask Kamlesh, what is very important in spiritual life? Knowledge. Yes, the whole purpose of the kata is to get some transcendental knowledge which you then apply to better yourself. This is the real self-help program. It's for your better, so my betterment too. So hearing is always the beginning. Then chanting, remembering. We're going to do praying, right? And we're going to do arati, we're going to do worship. So building that temple is part of deity worship. There's a nice statement. Maybe one of these next coming up, I'll find some statements in the 11th canto, in the Bhagavad-Gītā, where Krishna says, one who builds a temple for me or makes a garden for me gets much blessings. Sometimes people also ask the question, and sometimes Indian people ask the question, why do we have to have deities? Well, I will find the quotes in the 11th canto that authorizes. Krishna says, yes, you should do this. Right, one time I did a program, and the Indian family was saying, why do we have to have all this money spent on the deity? We should feed the poor people. Some people think like that. They don't understand. They're not educated. They're not trained. So in a future class, I'll do a class like that. Why it's important. I think that'll be a good idea, yes?
Yes, Prabhuji, next week, it's not advertising, but just next week, Varkad is going to take a class which he's going to explain why all the rituals we do, why do we do arti, why do we do tea,
good.
Why is the coconut. So that's the next Sunday he's doing that.
Very good.
And I want you to continue that sometime on an advanced level probably.
Well, I'll find the quotes substantiating, first of all, why we have to do deity worship and what are the benefits of constructing a temple for the Lord.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it'll just be, redoing what he'll do fine, don't worry. It'll be more than sufficient. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. So Bhakti Yoga means use your senses, use your talents, use your abilities. Everything that you have, who gave it to you? Krishna, yes. It was given to you. So what you have been given, you give back. In other words, the example, it's there in the Bhagavatam. How do you worship the Ganges? With Ganges water. You offer it back to the Ganges. So in the same way, how do you worship God? With those very things that He gave you. It's like with your children. You give your children so much. If they do some little thing in reciprocation to you, that makes you feel so good, right? Even if they just, on your birthday, they send you a card. Right? So God is great. He doesn't need anything. But if you show some appreciation, He becomes very pleased. And if God becomes pleased, just like Prabhupada said, one time. If you offer to Krishna and he eats, you are set for life. You are set for life. If he actually eats your offering, you are set for life. So Bhakti Yoga is so nice. It's easy. We learn from Bhagavad-Gītā. Susukam kartum. It's easy. Yes. Janayati ashu vairagyam jnanam chayad ahoitukam. So this is the second half of this very important shloka. So the idea being, if you're asking somebody to do something, naturally they're going to ask, well, what's in it for me? It's okay. Somebody may say, okay, you're saying to do so many things. All right, and you explained, okay. But do I get anything out of it? Yes. Janayati yashu vairagyam jnanam chayad ahoitukam. Here is your dividend return on investment. I know you all have investments. You don't start planning for your retirement at 60. You started to plan for your retirement at 25, right? If you're not starting now, you already set up for retirement. Okay, so in the same way, and you're looking for the best investment to get the best return on your investment. You do lots of homework, due diligence. What should I invest in to get the best return on my investment? So here is your return on investment for doing Bhakti Yoga. Janayati ashu vairagyam. Very soon, very quickly. First word, vairagyam, not Viagra. Vairagya. I wish there was such a commercial. Vairagya. Detachment. Detachment means becoming disinterested in temporary, useless material things. As I already explained, Dhritarashtra's main sin was his attachment. Instead of becoming detached, that attachment to Duryodhana caused him to lose everything at the end. He invested, Dhritarashtra invested all of his energy, all of his life in Duryodhana and his other sons, and in the end, what was his return on investment? Zero. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And in fact, where was Dhritarashtra living after the battle of Kurukshetra? In the home of the very people he always tried to kill. What a despicable life. What a embarrassing. That's why Vidura came and chastised him. Said, look at you, have you no shame, my brother? You're living in the house of the very people you tried to kill. Finally, Dhritarashtra woke up and got from his brother Vidura detachment. He left, Gandhari followed, and he went and started to perform meditation. Finally, at the end. So we should not be like Dhritarashtra. Yes, Prabhuji, I'll do what you're saying when I get old. We're already old.
No, but if you get that point, tomorrow may not be there.
That's right. But Prabhupada taught us, you're already old. Even you're 16, you're already old. So detachment means losing the attraction for temporary material sense gratification. And again, you can learn everything about that in Bhagavad-Gītā. It's all there. Bhagavad-Gītā is the essence, the summary of all the Vedas. Why does Krishna not recommend worship of demigods? He gives several reasons. the result is limited and temporary. That's why. Whereas worship of God is eternal, right? And unlimited. Big difference. Do you want a limited temporary result? Or do you want an eternal, unlimited result? Take your pick. Do you want $1 or $1 billion? Choice is yours. That is there. This is what Krishna is explaining in Bhagavad-Gītā. He describes happiness in the mode of passion, ignorance, and goodness. But they're all binding. Even the mode of goodness is binding. You don't get liberation from the mode of goodness. It's still binding. You want unlimited happiness? Then you have to do Bhakti Yoga Prayojita. Same thing, Krishna says it 3 times. You want to see me? Bhakti, thank you. You want to know me? Bhakti. You want to come to me? 8th chapter it's there. End of 11th chapter is there. Towards the end of 18th chapter is there. Never he says, you will know me, see me, come to me by karma. Not by jnana. Not by any yoga other than bhakti. That's what Krishna says, not me. Don't shoot the messenger. I'm just repeating what Krishna says in Bhagavad-Gītā. And as I already said, Bhagavad-Gītā is the preliminary work. So vairagya, detachment, and as soon as you can get some detachment, the better off you're going to be. The more you're detached from this material world, the happier you will be, because you will not be so affected by the ups and downs of this material world, such as death in the family. That's a traumatic experience. And if you don't have transcendental knowledge, that death experience of your husband or wife or child, God forbid, is a very traumatic experience. But if you have a nice bank account of transcendental knowledge, you'll not be disturbed. So as soon as you can get some detachment into your account, the better off you're going to be. So that is something I will urge. As soon as possible, start to become detached. Then, Kamlesh's favorite word, jnanam. But here, this jnanam is different from material knowledge. This jnanam, this is real knowledge. Real knowledge is where Bhagavad-Gītā starts. That's real, because what does Krishna tell Arjuna? If you notice, in 2nd chapter, Krishna says to Arjuna, you should transcend the Vedas. Huh? Yes. There's a reason why Krishna says Nishtragunyo Bhavarjuna. Arjuna, Krishna says, the Vedas mainly deal with the 3 modes of material nature. You should learn to transcend them. So, Bhagavad-Gītā begins with transcendental knowledge. That's where it begins. Or, those of you who are students of Ramayana, there's much transcendental knowledge in Ramayana. There's that one incident where Ram has gone to the forest and they all come from Ayodhya to try to convince Ram that he should go back. And then there's that Brahmin who starts to speak atheistic philosophy in order to convince Ram that he should return. And Ram then speaks transcendental knowledge and proves that this Brahmin is speaking bogus philosophy. So there's much transcendental knowledge there in Ramayana, also there in Mahabharata. There is transcendental knowledge. But if you want a crash course on transcendental knowledge, Kamlesh, Bhagavad-Gītā beginning with chapter 2, where Krishna says, right there, Arjuna, why are you lamenting? You're supposed to be a learned person, but no learned person talks like you're talking. No, a learned person does not lament. Why? Because he's not the body. He's not the mind. And it begins. So, transcendental knowledge. So, Janayati Ashu. Janayati, something is produced, something is born. Just like if you strike a match, what's born? Fire. Very good. And a man and woman come together, they produce a child. Something is born. So by the application of devotional service, two things are born: knowledge and detachment. So you want to become detached? Do devotional service. You want transcendental knowledge? Do devotional service. Lord Chaitanya, in his Shikshastakam, says very clearly that this chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra, everybody, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. This is the heart and soul of all transcendental knowledge. If you're having a hard time understanding Bhagavad-Gītā or Srimad Bhagavatam, then start chanting. Within time, you will get the understanding. It'll become clear, like a bell. When you hear that bell sound, right, it's very clear. When you're sleeping, and then the alarm goes off, right? So the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra wakes you up. It is the life and soul of all transcendental knowledge. Now the last word, ahaitukam. This application of Bhakti Yoga, giving you knowledge and detachment, is a causeless gift of God. Causeless. Causeless means Krishna doesn't have to do it, but he does it. That is the meaning of causeless. Because you cannot make Krishna do anything. That's impossible. The only one that can make Krishna do something is who? Rādhā Rani. That's the only one. Yes, it's true, a devotee. But generally, it's Rādhā Rani. Case in point, when Krishna was hiding from the gopis, he manifested 4 arms. So in front of the gopis, Krishna could hide behind 2 extra arms. But when Rādhā Rani came, he tried. He could not hold up the 2 extra arms. Yes. But yes, you're right, a devotee, of course. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hari Haraye Namaha. Hari Haraye Namaha. Hari Haraye Namaha. have a special treat for you. You're now going to hear Prabhupada in Hindi giving you the explanation of the Maha Mantra. And then you'll have your japa. It's only 5 minutes. I found this the other day. I said, I must do this for my favorite temple. What's my favorite temple? And when I go to LA, what do I say? And I'm a politician. Okay, here's Prabhupada speaking in Hindi.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare